Good day, everyone, and welcome to this exciting webinar on investing in the Islamic digital economy, which also happened to be the launch of our top 15 most active global venture capital in Islamic digital economy. And my name is Rian Oval, and I'm a consultant for DinarStandard. And thank you all for joining us from around the globe. I believe whether you are an investors, an entrepreneurs, industry leaders, or simply passionate about the Islamic digital economy. And first off, let me introduce you who we are. We are DinarStandard. In partnership with Salaam Gateway, are proud to bring you this groundbreaking analysis. So for those who may not be familiar with DinarStandard, we are a leading growth strategy research and advisory firm dedicated to empowering organizations in the global Islamic economy. We've been at the forefront of providing data-driven insights, market intelligence, strategy advisory services to help businesses tap into trillion-dollar Muslim markets. And our work spans sectors like halal food, Islamic finance, modest fashions, and more, with reports and consultations that have guided governments, corporations, and startups alike. Salaam Gateway, our media partner, is, I think, the go-to platform for news and analysis on the Islamic economy, delivering timely and in-depth content to a global audience. And today, we are launching our exclusive analysis of the top 15 most active venture capital firms in the digital Islamic economy. A sector that we define as digital native, consumer-facing services, where the primary offering, or at least a significant part, is driven by Islamic contents or requirements. Things like Sharia compliant fintech, or a halal e-commerce platform, or Islamic education tools, and more. So this ranking isn't just a list. I think it is a spotlight on the engines of the innovations that are shaping the future of 2 billion, I think over 2 billion Muslims worldwide. And why is it important? The digital Islamic economy is booming. It projected to reach hundreds of billions in value by the end of the decade, driven by trends like rising smartphone penetrations, e-commerce adoptions, young and tech-savvy Muslim demographics, just to mention a few. Yet until now, there has been a gap in understanding which venture capitals are truly leading the charge. Our ranking tried to fill that void, offering benchmark for investors and startups and policymakers to identify trends, opportunities, and best practices. And in the era of digital transformations, where it meets ethical finance, highlighting these players help us accelerate sustainable growth, ensuring Sharia compliance in tech, and also promotes inclusivity in the global market. And that brings us to the instrumental role of venture capital in this ecosystem. Venture capital aren't just funders per se. They're catalysts for change. These firms provide not only capital, but also mentorship, networks, and strategic guidance for startups to navigate complex regulatory landscape and cultural nuances, just to put it out there. And this physics involvement is key to scale innovation that address real needs. Take example, halal fintech solutions or Islamic edtech platforms, Well, not only that, but it also attract non-OIC players, like those from the Singapore and the US and the UK. You will see that uh, within the next hours. And without this venture capital, many groundbreaking ideas would remain unrealized. That's a bummer, I believe. So I think what we can expect from today's webinar is that over the next hour, we'll dive deep into this top VC ranking. What are what are the profiles looks like? What are the investment trends, the geographic insights? And we are also especially excited to hear from some of the top venture capitals players who will share their experience, backgrounds in navigating digital Islamic economy, offering us first-hand perspective on the opportunities and challenges they've encountered. And then we'll wrap up with the panel discussions and the Q&A sessions where you can engage directly, asking about sector forecasts or partnership possibilities and more. And for that, please feel free to type in your questions to the chat box during our sessions. Then at the end, I'll read that to each of our panelists. And thank you again for being here. And let's kick things off. Let's see our findings. I hope everyone can see my screen clearly.
Yes, it's clear.
Perfect. Okay, let's set this things up. So yeah, this slide introduces us to the digital Islamic economy. So it sets up our framework, and it's a dynamic ecosystem we define as digital native, consumer-facing services, where the primary offering, as I mentioned, or at least a significant part of it, is driven by Islamic contents or requirements. At its core, this economy spans across 8 digital service categories, from halal food, halal beauty, Muslim-friendly tourism, healthcare and wellness, fashion, art and design, media and recreation, Islamic finance, as well as Islamic education tech. These sectors are the heartbeat of an innovations, addressing the needs of over 2 billion Muslims globally. Driving this ecosystem are 2 types of catalysts. On the soft side, we have organization innovations, think about human capability, engagement, incentives, management analytics, all of those, and growth mindset paired with critical system thinking. These are the people and the processes that nurture startups and scale ideas. And on the hard side, we're talking about cutting edge technologies like 5Gs, robotics, AI, including Gen AI, big data analytics, IoT, and all of those things. Those tools are revolutionizing how Islamic content is delivered, ensuring security, scalability, as well as accessibility. And together, they're supported by essential services. Think about infrastructure, policies, regulations, digital skills, and all of that. So those are interconnecting, supporting framework of what we call the Islamic digital economy. So this framework is the lens through which we've ranked our top 15 venture capitals that you'll hear about today. Now, let's see the chart in the middle here. We can see that the global digital Islamic economy is only a fraction of global digital economy. But riding this wave, of the growth of global digital economy is, I think, one of the most important way to keep the Islamic market up with the global growth. So this is how we drive Islamic market growth. One of the important methods. And now we can zoom in to the top 10 global digital economies, where the numbers even tell us more compelling stories. If we look forward for 2029, we would see Indonesia would lead the pack of the size of the digital Islamic economy. It is a clear sign of a dominance. I could say that that has been driven by a massive Muslim population and a thriving startup economy. The US follows, showcasing the influence of a non-OIC players with a high Muslim population, driven by obviously the immigrations and all of that. And this data sets the stage for why venture capitals we are ranking today are so critical. They are the ones that channels capital into those markets, from Indonesian startup hubs to the US fintech innovators. So their investments are shaping the future. And that's why we are excited to hear from some of these venture capital players next. Okay, now let's reveal this. Now, what you see on your screen right now is our top 15 most active venture capital firms in digital economy as of 2025. We have observed around 169 deals in what we've identified a transaction investments in global digital Islamic economy. All of those deals worth over 700 millions of disclosed value. So we see here at the top of the list, Wahed Ventures, reflecting their strategic investment in Sharia compliance fintech solutions, making them a powerhouses, in market like the UK. Following closely behind, we see Core Vision Investments, their investment across Islamic finance, tech, particularly in the Middle East. And another VCs that stand out, I'm just mentioning the top three here, is Hasan VC, which ranked the third, based, I think, right in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where their investments focus on early stage startups in halal food and halal Islamic edtech or Islamic edtech, sorry. So yeah, again, what I really want to stress out is that these venture capitals are not just investing money. We should see them as the one that shapes the future. Take Wahed, for example. Their portfolio, I think, right over 200 million US dollars. Those portfolio are the engine or the catalyst of creating the future of global Islamic economy. And there are also, like, outside of that top 15 most active venture capitals, we would have a few of notable venture capital that wouldn't made it to the top 15, but we cannot disregard their actions and their investments in the global Islamic economy. Among them we include Innate, Continuum, STV, as well as Shuruk Capital. Let's move forward from that. So in terms of geographical distributions, we would see countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE leading with the most investment counts. So startups coming from these regions, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Indonesia are tying with Egypt with 16 investments, but Saudi Arabia and the UAE are actually the leaders of where the startups are. And some of the notable deals we've observed is MNT Halan from Egypt has raised around has raised 157 million US dollars from IVC and Endeavors and some other VCs. And also Malaysian tech-driven coffee chain, Zeus, have secured 57 million US dollars to support expansion to Singapore and Brunei. They're trying to target the big markets within the regions. Sector-wise, you would see the sector distributions are dominated by fintech, then by food tech, and then edutechs, and I think quarter of that are span across other sectors. And the interesting part also that we've observed is that most of the Islamic VCs are focusing on the early stage ventures. So those seeds and pre-seeds, Series A, are the one that are highly preferred. And yes, that should be the launch or the introductions of our top most active venture capitals. You can see a more detailed of these versions up in Salaam Gateway, where we would share the link to the whole article later on, right after this sessions. And as I mentioned, we've invited a few of the top venture capital players. If I could name them, they would come from Wahid, Hasan VC, as well as Innate Capital. And I'll have a conversation with them, one by one in the next half an hour, just to understand how they basically do their businesses, how the risk profiles and all of that thing. So first, I would like to invite Ali Ahmed from Wahid Ventures.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Ali. It's glad to have you here. And now that you see Wahid, your firm leading whole other VCs in top global Islamic economy, digital Islamic economy, what's your first reaction to that?
Alhamdulillah, I think the first reaction is obviously very humbling. We do a lot of work behind the scenes, so it's good to see that this has led to us being recognized. But also, it's good to see so many of our peers on the list as well. So many other players. We have Ethis and Hasan VC, Innate, also Curate Capital. You have some other players on there as well. So look, the whole venture capital space or Islamic venture capital space is not just the effort of Wahid. It's the effort of the collective group of other investors, and ultimately the general investor audience. It's because people understand the need to develop our community, our founders, and fund them, but also support them in addition to just the funding as well. So alhamdulillah, where the space is today versus where it was 3 years ago when we started, it's much more healthier, and that's great to see.
Sure, sure. Of course, really excited to know that. And I think my first question would be, I'm really keen to know, how do Wahid identify or prioritize investment opportunities, that are aligned with both Islamic values and the global market trends?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
Yeah. So look, we generally every venture capital firm has a network, and alhamdulillah, our network and people know us for our investments in the Islamic digital economy. So naturally, we attract that type of deal flow, or we have that level of referrals from other venture capital players that they know, look, if you're looking to scale in the B2C space, or even B2B, but generally B2C. Wahid is an example of a company who has done that across multiple locations, regions,
Mm,
revenue, AUM. Like, alhamdulillah, we've had a good journey, and that journey is still ongoing. So
mm,
naturally, we are able to attract the brightest and best founders, and that's obviously one pillar. You know, you're only as good as the flow that you get in. And
mm,
maybe some of the challenges early on was that it was hard to get that, level of founder to come and approach us and understand what we're doing, because it's a collaboration both between the founders and the company as well. Second, we actually don't have a bias towards like Islamic digital economy
mm,
versus normal digital
mm,
economy. So if the company is look if the founders are credible and mission driven, if the solutions are economically viable, if there's potential to find that product market fit, then we look into it. Obviously, if
mm,
there's a positive impact on society as well, then that's a big plus. So an example of something that has, at the time was a company we looked at more for the social impact was a US-based company called Ruh, or Canadian based actually, and they provide mental health services for Muslims. So the big problem they were solving was, Muslims, when it comes to mental health, they don't approach similar to how a conventional person may, or someone in the
mm,
conventional space might approach like a therapist. We don't have Muslim centric therapists. So this was something our investors wanted to support because they understood the problem. Mental health issues are on the rise globally, and there's no sort of tech solution for that. Fast forward a year since we've invested, and even though it's had a social impact, it's also
mm.
been one of the most high performing from a revenue perspective in our portfolio as well. So, those are the things that we look into in investing into mission-driven founders. It has to be sustainable from an economic perspective and be a company that can get to profitability, sustainability, exits, because ultimately the reason investors are investing is still ROI driven.
Yeah.
But then to have that positive impact on society, we place some weight on there as well.
Mm,
And actually, I just very recently, or maybe actually on Friday, I did a survey with about 10 of our high net worth investors, and I asked them, like, look, if we're doing social impact investments, sometimes maybe the ROI might not be as high.
mm.
Would you still invest? All of them said they would invest more because it's got a social impact. So that's what we find, it's investor driven, and like that's important to us as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because at the end, I think what we are also keen to know is that how much, uh, how far along that the investor would like to trade off their ROI with the social impact, and then I
Mm.
think that's a really complex
Yeah, yeah.
discussion to really unfold. And it's glad to know that uh, social impact has always been the anchor, on the
Mhm.
bottom of the ROI. I mean, that's still top of the criteria, because
Yeah.
sustainability, we need to keep things forward uh, in order to sustainably doing good things. I think that's what the main message is, and I think uh,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. And look, one of the things with venture capital that we have to be frank about, right, is that money is tied in for a long period of time. So 5 years plus 7 years, 10 years. Now, investors don't get any dividend in this time. And, if anyone's thinking about investing, it should only be a small portion of their portfolios. There's a lot of risk. If the companies fail, they completely fail. And we make sure all of our investors know this before they invest. So a byproduct of that, okay, they don't have liquidity, but they want to know that their investment is doing good as well. So
Yeah,
I think as an asset class, more and more investors are looking at it more so, okay, maybe not for something that they're dependent on ROI from, but more so that they know their capital is doing good, you know?
yeah. And yeah, as we are in the topic of risk, uh I think Wahed well, we would see like one of the perspective of risk is being concentrated.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think not just Wahid, but it's happened across every VCs, because like when we see our sectoral distributions, like half chunk of it is Islamic finance.
Hmm.
And so you know, how do you think should VCs diversifying into other sectors? Or it's just because like that's the market, that's what it
Yeah.
is.
It
What?
probably look that's you made a very interesting point that look more than 51%, more than 50% are fintech. It may generally be that this is an area where there is more opportunity for a company to
Mm,
start up. There is more of a open sort of ocean where there isn't many things that have been solved for versus in other areas solutions may already be there. So there could be multiple reasons why that is. Look, it's always from a venture capital perspective, diversification is key. Like, at this point in time, it's very difficult when you're starting out and you've got portfolio. The other guys, Umar and Dannah probably know the same. You don't know which one of your companies is going to be the one that's going to be the winner. And generally speaking, most venture funds, if they've got 20 investments, 30 investments, is a very few number, two or three, maybe four, that drive the whole portfolio's returns. So you do need to have enough bets in there for you to drive the overall ROI. And look, every company has to have its focus point. Obviously, we have more of a tendency towards fintech because we ourselves are a fintech and we understand this space probably better than most and have the network, have the resources, have the uh, ability to give advice to help these companies grow. So we feel more comfortable when we're investing into fintech, and we go as early as like first check with fintech. Now, and we've done that with Ethis Turkey, we've done that with Zodbank, and a few others as well. Now, with other sectors, like we've done some really interesting investments in Saudi with a company called Baraka,
mm,
that essentially helps with the food that's going to go to waste and helping people buy that at a discount, and they're really flying right now. Salaam Booking being another one that's in the travel sector. So those ones, obviously, we look at, we come in a little bit later where they've obviously already got revenue and they've got a level of growth. So it really just depends on the player. But for us, fintech is a focus because it's an area that we know inside out versus some of the other sectors, which we obviously do a lot of research on as well before we invest, and we know what we're doing. And there's some parallels with growing investor bases and customer bases and managing, customer stickiness and retention, which is obviously across, it's agnostic to the sector. But obviously, there's certain things that we can do in fintech that others can't do, and which is why we focus more on that
yeah.
area.
Because fintech is in by and by itself is also enablers of other
Yeah,
sectors
yeah,
as well. So
absolutely.
that's absolutely understandable. And I think one last questions for you is that, and I think I'm going to ask this again from
Hmm.
across other panelists, is that can you share specific success story of your investments in Muslim consumer space? You mentioned a few like Ruh and Baraka. Can you just
Hmm.
explore a few things further?
Yeah,
What was
so
probably something personal or yeah.
no, so I think one of the success stories that there's so many to choose from. There's actually so many, so I'll focus on I'll focus on the on Baraka because I've just mentioned it, but you can see the impact that Islamic investments are having. So, when it comes to food and food waste, our religion teaches us that
Mm,
we shouldn't waste food, and
mm,
it's a big sort of, so many hungry people around the world, and restaurants and takeaways and hotels, the amount of food that gets wasted every year is ridiculous. Now, through us investing in Baraka, we've had a direct impact in reducing waste significantly when it comes to
mm,
food waste. And then just going there, going to Saudi, seeing the company, seeing them set up, seeing how passionate they all are, and that capital has enabled that. And these guys are flying, and people are happy because there's a cost of living crisis as well, where the cost of food is increasing. So people cannot enjoy restaurants and these fancy franchises as much as they would like to. but through this application, they're able to still enjoy it at a fraction of the price. So there's two solutions, two problems being solved. One being we're directly having a positive impact on the environment and society, and that's just not just for Muslims; it's for the whole world to enjoy the benefits from. And
Yeah.
second being the cost of living and reducing the amount people are having to pay for their takeaways and their treats and stuff, and that's also important and empowering because that means they have more capital to do other things, more capital to give zakat, and again it benefits the whole economy. So that's the thing when
Yeah.
you make an investment into the Islamic digital economy, it's not just you sometimes the effects are so compounding and can have many waves that that's really something that makes me happy when I think about the work that we've done here.
Oh, glad to hear that from you, Ali.
Jazakallah khair.
And yeah, thank you for sharing some of your thoughts as a panelist today as we move forward into our next uh panelist, Brother Umar Munshi from Hasan VC, Hasan Venture Capital. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Umar.
Walaikum salam warahmatullah.
So glad you're joining us here as the managing partner of Hasan VC. And uh yeah, first off, I think, what do you think? What do you think about the results, our top 15 venture capital ranking?
So first of all, I gotta say that I really appreciate this work and this research. As you pointed out at the start, there's very little information or data or visibility, right, in this space, and it's very nascent. It's still, I guess, relatively small, as you showed in your bar charts as well. So at this early stage, this kind of information is very useful, and it helps all of us, right? Because we can now also reach out to each other and explore
Yeah,
areas of synergy and collaboration, inshallah.
perfect. It's a great point of view that point out that there. I think my first question to Hasan VC is that uh as a relatively new players, if I might say
Yep.
that,
Yep.
what do you think would be the main challenges that you faced in competing with the established VCs, like both in specifically in Sharia or Islamic market, or more broader in a general global market? Given in Southeast Asia, I think Singapore has been the giant, has been the LeBron James of the regions, and many venture capitals coming up from there. And so how do you navigate those challenges and seeking out opportunities out of it?
All right. Good question. And maybe allow me to just give a bit of context, right? So while Hasan VC is about a year old, quite new, we have actually had an angel investment group that has been investing
Mm,
in startups for about 5-6 years as
mm,
part of the Ethis community within the Ethis ecosystem, right? Which is the parent company of Hasan VC. So we have been in this space for some time, for 6 years now, and that led to the evolution of that group, angel group, to have
mm.
for us to launch our own VC fund. Yeah. So the word Hasan, in case you're not aware, is Halal Super Angels. Right. That's the acronym of.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a combination of those words put together. It becomes Hasan VC, and of course, Hasan means good, so it's a good name, inshallah. Now, so as a fund, we are coming to a year old. We're a bit less than a year old, and we have a very specific approach where we have an accelerator program and other programs. We just launched a venture studio program last month. So the program, on the startup side, how we compete, back to your question, how we compete with other VCs. In general, we always believe that we need to have real value and not rely on the fact that there are not many other halal players, right? Or Islamic VCs. While that is a clear-cut benefit, right, we have had a number of the startups come to us and say that we're coming to you because we can't find any other halal VCs. right? In this part of the world, especially. Or, we've spoken to a number of VCs, but there is a gap in alignment, a gap in understanding, and so on, because we are trying to serve Muslims or the Muslim community and they don't really get it, right? They don't understand it. And so while that is there, we also make sure that we try our best to reach a level of excellence or ihsan, such that the value we provide, um, notwithstanding the uniqueness about with regard to being halal, the value must be real and significant, right? And given that we are operating a program, running programs, the experience of the founders is very important. The value that we provide to the founders is very important. So what we've seen in our experience is so far, the content that we have in our program is very unique, where we add in not only just layer on, but found the foundations of the content that we share and the information that we share, and the insights and exercises and workshops and whatnot, is with the Islamic worldview. And the Islamic worldview is embedded in a way that even non-Muslims, some of our participants are non-Muslims, they also appreciate and understand what it's all about, right? And for Muslims, this helps them sort of place their startup within their life as a Muslim, right? And that we see to be very, very powerful. So that's the first thing. The second way in which we sort of compete, and this has very powerful long-term network effects, is the founder community, right? So as we go through these programs, we have right now about 150, 170 founders, entrepreneurs who have gone through the program and graduated over a number of cohorts. And they are actively helping each other, learning from each other, supporting each other, collaborating with each other. And that community is where we see the most immediate and long-term value, right? So maybe that's how I can answer your question.
Okay. Glad to know that. So you're practically creating an ecosystem and a supporting ecosystem to which like each of these players are network and support each other. And
Yep.
and speaking to that, to more general ecosystem, how do you think your proximity to Southeast Asia startup ecosystem shape your investment strategy compared to global players?
All right. So we spread and promote the concept of a camel startup, right? And typically you talk about unicorns, billion-dollar companies and so on. But our focus is on camels. And very quickly, a camel startup is a startup that is very resilient, is able to survive in the toughest conditions. Yet at the same time, it can also move fast and grow fast and be huge in terms of commercial success and impact, right? So, excuse me. All right. So, the camel analogy or the camel approach is quite different, where the startup is expected to also have a focus on sustainability, such that it can, withstand challenges, and secondly, be very flexible and nimble, especially in today's world that's changing all the time, right? Every 2-3 months, things get disrupted nowadays. So, based on these two realities, we find that in regions like Southeast Asia, there's a very interesting opportunity where the cost structure is lower. The population in general in many of the countries here is quite large compared to other, maybe if you compare the Muslim world and Muslim communities and countries. And so that creates the conditions where a startup can actually start and scale, or at least in the early stages, with little little capital. And a small bit of money can go a long way, right? Like typically we invest pre-seed at 60,000 US dollars, right? The equivalent. And that can last 1 year, 1.5 years, right? You can't do that, in the UK, right? Or even the GCC. So there is this unique opportunity where the lower cost base and large population come together. And that's how we see in this part of the world there is that unique opportunity. But with that said, we are open to startups and founders from other parts of the world. And the bigger opportunity is not just focusing on Southeast Asia, but to see
Indeed.
how, where, and how we can actually do something that transcends borders, that brings together solutions for not only Muslims but also potentially for wider, community, for humanity in general.
Indeed. Indeed. Yes, thank you for sharing your thought about that. And uh, one more questions. I think. How do you engage with the investment community? Community of investors. How do you envision gathering valuable feedback to better understand your peer investors?
So Brother Ali also mentioned earlier on that startup and VC investments not for everyone, right? I see a very urgent need to spread more education and awareness about investing in startups. Let me give you an example. When we first started Hasan VC, I went to meet a friend in Singapore who's running a $2 or $3 billion quant fund, right? Practicing Muslim, quite concerned about the Umar. I mean, don't ask me about the quant fund whether Sharia compliant, but he's someone who's interested to give back and contribute, right? And his first response was, "I've invested in 3 startups. I lost all my money. I'm not going to touch this." Right? And that's the reality. If you invest in one-off startups, there's a high chance that you're going to lose your money. High chance, right? And so investors need to know what you're doing. You need to diversify, right? That's the most basic thing. For example, I believe with Wahid and others, there's a strategy attached to it, and so on, right? And or invest in a fund where the fund does the diversification for you, right? Like for Hasan VC, we target a total of 50 or more startups in Fund 1. And right now, we're exactly halfway at 24, right? So when you place your investment in a fund, it's immediately diversified. So I think that's very, very critical. But at the same time, while the commercial side of things is very important, while the risk aspect is very important, being an entrepreneur, having been an entrepreneur in Islamic finance for the past 12 years, I strongly, sincerely believe that this is one of the best places you can put your money for impact, right? If you can take the risk, right? If it's something suitable for your appetite and your circumstances, this is where you are actually funding innovation solutions for the Muslim world and beyond, and where we are creating solutions based on and building on the perfect principles of Islam. Because we know, I mean, as Muslims, we know Islam is perfect. The solutions that we have been given, the prohibitions that we have been blocked from doing, the guidance that we have, that is perfect, right? Our challenge is how do you bring it to life? How do you bring it to this real world? How do you bring it up in this modern world? So that I feel is the opportunity that we have when we support Muslim founders and not just sort of giving them money, but giving them support, guidance, and ecosystem as well. Yeah.
Okay, glad to know that, Brother Umar. And I think one more, as I asked Ali about his specific success story, can you share yours?
Well, there's quite a number. Yeah. So for those of you interested on our website, we have our portfolio companies, but I will highlight one from our first cohort and one from our second cohort. In terms of religious impact, in our first cohort, we invested in AI-based Quran learning to learn how to read the Quran startup, right, from Indonesia. They're not known much outside Indonesia because it's very local right now. Although they are planning to go overseas. And they have about, depending on the month and the time of year, like Ramadan, there's a spike, right? But typically they have about 300,000 monthly active users. And these users are using the Quran, every day, right? Every month, 300,000 people learn to read the Quran or the app supports their learning of the Quran. It doesn't fully replace the learning. You still need a teacher and so on, but it supports it, right? And when we saw that, we were like, wow, mashallah, this is incredible. You know, we would like
Yeah.
a slice of this for the akhirah, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we saw, I mean, just to be direct, we saw that they had challenges monetizing because it's Indonesia, low,
Yeah.
low income, right?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, they have started, after we invested, after various conversations and discussions, they have pivoted and started to be more aggressive on the B2B side. And today they're serving many schools in Indonesia
Makes sense.
using their app. And Alhamdulillah, that's given them some good income, right? So that's one I want to highlight. Very, very specific Muslim impact, Islamic spiritual impact of Qara'a. But for Hasan VC, while we do look out for that, we also invest in anything that's not halal, not haram, right? Anything that's halal,
Mm.
especially things that have benefit. So the other one I want to focus on, I'm just looking at our portfolio now. Maybe I'll highlight this startup named Sentry, where they developed an AI-based system, some kind of computer vision system to process data of assets of big firms. For example, their first major client is Petronas, right? The big, oil Fortune 500
Oil. Yeah.
company here, like Aramco in Saudi and
Yeah.
Pertamina in Indonesia, right? So
Yeah.
their first client is Petronas, where in the past Petronas would send drones to record, their pipelines and all that, and then humans will process that one-time footage for 1.5 months to identify issues, right? Because you're just staring at the pipes and land, right? And looking out for potential issues. Sentry does it in real time. Okay, imagine the impact of that on
Yeah.
Petronas and the impact on people, because there was also a significant issue where there was an explosion that happened and some houses were destroyed and so on. So imagine the impact on Petronas, the impact on people with this kind of solution, and it's also a highly sensitive kind of technologies, right? Because these are
Mm.
critical infrastructures, and so that's where I feel there's an additional value of homegrown startups, not imported from abroad, typically the West, where we can look out for our own assets in that way. Yeah, I guess
Exactly.
I can go on. You want me to go on? But I think two will be enough, inshallah.
I think we have one more speaker that we would like to share their
Sure.
thoughts and
Maybe one
opinions.
quick one if you don't mind. This is from Dubai, so it's interesting. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So
I can give
Dubai,
you
two
one.
young founders, hacker type founders. They came to join our program to learn because they didn't need money. Actually, they knew how to be a good camel startup. It's called Sniff, right? Sniff,
Okay.
SNIFF. Check it out, sniff.so. It sniffs out opportunities in social media, right? So you can actually type out what you're looking for in social media. Let's say you're looking for a client or looking for a job or looking for opportunity, right? And Sniff will go into social media and find that and pass it back to you, right? So it makes social media searchable through its AI system. Very cool. I'll stop there.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that, Brother Umar. And we moved on to our final panelist, last but not least, Dannah from Innate Capital.
Hello, alaikum, well, thank you so much for having me.
Likewise, Dannah. Thank you for much for involved in this webinar. And yeah, I think can you tell us more about Innate first?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
a little bit further about that.
Sure. No, great starting point. So Innate is a family office that invests private capital into values-based businesses and funds. Most of our direct investments have focused on the fintech space. We are US based. The majority of our portcos span North America and the UK. And just given the niche of our firm, we're primarily stage agnostic right now, although many of our investments have been in earlier stages, primarily B2C, but open to B2B as well. And I will just share on this note a little bit about the origin story of Innate, if that's okay with you, because I think it speaks to a lot of the things that have been said already.
Yeah.
And the name itself came from this idea that individuals and organizations do have this intrinsic motivation and innate need to benefit society. So leaning into that, we were focused on this idea of financial inclusion and believe that broader access to investing tools and financial tools would benefit society as a whole. So it just kind of leads into a lot of the things that have been said already. And it's a wonderful organization to be a part of, alhamdulillah. And I think there's been a lot of fueling of the Islamic finance solutions in the US through Innate.
Okay, glad to hear that. And yeah, as a VC that we found a Islamic market centric, but being in the US, what do you say would be the main challenges, or is that any opportunities lies behind it? Can you share your thought about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. As mentioned previously, VC is quite risky, and the US is less than 2% Muslim. So you're talking about a much smaller market, I think, compared to a lot of these primarily predominantly Muslim countries. I think our mindset really going into a lot of this is that building a fundamentally good product that can be used in a mainstream way is essentially very important to success in this space. Just because something is Sharia compliant doesn't mean we should be investing in it. Just because something is halal doesn't necessarily mean it's a fundamentally good product. And so this idea of how can Islamic or values-based businesses continue to scale through product development, through developing things that are standalone, strong products and exist strongly without necessarily the Sharia baseline is incredibly important for us. If you took the Islam out of this, would this still be a good product? And then when you transpose Islam on it, it becomes a great product. So that's what's exciting to us is where does this intersection lie within the US and the UK and North America as a whole. So it is quite challenging just given that it is a smaller market, but I think that opens a lot of opportunity for impact because a lot of individuals in the West generally do not have access to financial inclusion tools the way that they should. And so it's an opportunity through the challenging demographic and environment that we operate in.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier that it is a high risk in coming in and in early stage investments, if I might say. And how do you strike that balance of tolerating, at the end it's a risk tolerance, right? Tolerating the risk that have inherently within the early stage investment to the long-term growth potentials of the digital Islamic economy.
Yeah. I think this was alluded to before, this concept of VC is a long game. So when you invest your funds, you're expecting them to be growing over time, and you're not really going to see that return for a while. That said, I think there is a lot of opportunity in fintech. There's many reasons why the space is growing so quickly. Diversification is very important, though. And there does exist a sentiment that bringing financial inclusivity into our communities, inshallah, will do greater good and will continue to grow the space, right? The more people we have engaged in these products, the more people that have access to Sharia compliant financial solutions, for example, inshallah, the larger the market will grow, and we can continue to see that snowball and those wins. It is a community effort. It's a community effort on the investors' part, on the startup founders' part, on the users' part. And it sounds very, kumbaya, or very cliche, but it really does involve and need everyone's hands on deck in order to grow and be sustainable and reduce that risk over time. So I think the risk hedging kind of lies in the growth potential, if that makes sense.
Okay, yes, definitely. Yeah, I think one more questions that I like to hear from you, as I also have heard from other panelists, is that any specific success story that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Alhamdulillah, there's a lot of success stories to pull on from Innate's portfolio. I will share one of my personal favorites, which is the story of Zoya. Zoya is a Sharia compliant stock screening app for public securities. And mashallah, they've had a lot of really great impact. They actually most recently rolled out a feature that offers fund purification. So you can upload your portfolio. It'll tell you what parts of it are Sharia compliant, what parts are not, or upload any other fund that you may be a part of and kind of have that analysis done. They also have a really wonderful zakat calculation tool, which is very useful to myself and many others, alhamdulillah. So they're rolling out a lot of these really great features as part of their app. And Innate has been involved since the beginning, and mashallah, they've seen a lot of really great growth. Our proof of concept moment was, and this is the kind of like the win and the one of their many successes that I will highlight is when they were fundraising and they pitched to a conventional VC that became very interested in investing in Zoya. And at the time, this wasn't very common in the US to have conventional funds interested in Islamic products at all. And our proof of concept moment came when we got a call from the conventional VC that was considering Zoya, and they said, Zoya put us in touch with you, and we've been looking for someone like you guys to speak to for a very long time. And it was this moment of, okay, well, this market exists. It was a moment of market validation, and that these organizations do exist. They need experts to back them. They need the credibility, and they're looking for VCs and professionals who have the intel and the insight into this world of Sharia compliance and Islamic investing in order to continue growing the market. And the fact that it was appealing to a conventional investor is quite explanatory why that was exciting. But more so, it was that where are the rest of you guys? Like, we want to talk to more people that are using this product, and we want to understand where this market lies. Alhamdulillah, they ended up making the investment. It's been a great relationship since, but that was kind of our initial market validation moment. It was very exciting, alhamdulillah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dannah, for sharing your thought. And I think let's jump right into our Q&A sessions. There are some really good questions here that I like to know your thoughts about. And I think let's start off with I think if we can group a few of the questions. There are a few questions regarding the AI. And I think put it this way, I think you fund a lot of AI projects, a lot of AI startups, but what about you yourself? How is AI really embedded into VCs processes? How is it applied in your risk management processes, or how you select your portfolio, or how you monitor them? Yeah, Ali, can you share a little bit
Yeah.
of the experience of Wahed in terms of that front?
Yeah, I think where we mostly use AI is probably the research side of things. So just getting the data when we're putting our investment committee proposals together. So the team will use AI just to streamline, the time it takes to do everything independently. And I think it's quite good at digging out resources. On the deal flow side, I don't think we've used AI too much. So I know that's the question. Maybe some of the others may have used it a bit more, but we're probably not that reliant on AI for deal flow. We see that more still a human sort of element. And portfolio management review sort of it's good for I guess we're using it more for assessing what the benchmark should be, how our companies are performing based on that benchmark, and then we're able then to translate that into conversations to investors when they ask for investor updates.
Okay. What about you, Umar? How's Hasan has been leveraging AI?
Yeah, I guess at many different levels, in different ways. Definitely one of which is to optimize and increase efficiency in operations, automate certain things, help in as Ali mentioned, research, preparation of documents, materials, and all that, right? So definitely AI has been very useful in terms of streamlining and improving operations. One thing that we are definitely very cognizant of is that there must always be, a human in the loop. There must be that human aspect, a human, check, and preferably the human intellect as well, not relying on the AI. But we are working internally and also with some parties to see how we can speed up the screening process so that we can process more applicants faster, right? Because we understand that for startups, for founders, it's really about speed, and VCs take a long time to decide or even to reject, right? And that's a big problem because I'm a founder myself. Most of my my entire life I've been an entrepreneur, so I understand that pain, right? That's why we call ourselves a founder-founded fund. We're not some investment bankers sitting here trying to figure out how startups work, right? So speed is very critical, and we continuously improve our turnaround time in terms of getting back to the startups. And I think AI has a big role to play in that as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Omar. Dannah, do you have anything to add on that
I
from
think
your experience at Innate?
Yeah, I think they pretty much summed it up. Nothing beats the human connection, right? We have used it in small doses for just some process automation and to help things move a little bit faster when needed. But I think a huge part that it probably is not going away in the VC space is this relationship, element that really enhances firm value over time. And so I think we've used it in small doses, and I'd also say as we get more comfortable with tools, the concept of privacy becomes more important in terms of sharing, pumping proprietary information into a tool or something like that that we're not fully familiar with. So we've proceeded with caution with our investors, portcos, and ourselves in mind.
Okay, good to know that. And yeah, just for the conscious of time, I think I'm going to take one more questions. I think it's from Michelle Triviletti. I hope I don't butcher the name. In Europe, there is a lot of discussion about ESG also in the fintech investment world. In your opinion, is the term mas'uliyah applicable to the fintech world? So yeah, I think that would be responsible financing, if I'm not mistaken. So any thoughts on that, Ali?
Yeah, so I think in terms of if the question is asking like, is it a responsibility to develop the fintech space? I think absolutely. Look, if you look at core Islamic beliefs and the prohibition of interest being so firm in the Quran in Surah Baqarah, like it's a responsibility on us as builders and investors to look at building solutions to tackle the interest-based riba-based system and also the community to look into where their money is being held, where their money is being invested, and who is behind that. So doing that due diligence even on the Islamic finance companies is very, very important. So yeah, absolutely, I think it's a very, very good question, and something that it's a continuous journey, and we're really at the start of that.
Okay, thank you. Brother Umar, you have anything to add on that?
Yep. Yeah. Dannah will go last. Yeah, she always says the last part. Most difficult to think of something new. But yeah, I think the question could be interpreted in a few ways, right? So maybe latching onto the ESG side of things. So my view is definitely is all important, right? ESG, SRI, impact investment, sustainable investments. But the thing is, all these things are already there in the Islamic framework, right? In the Islamic approach, before they became a thing, right? So it's already embedded in Islamic principles and ethics, right? And I mean, I guess I don't want to call myself a skeptic, but the thing about morality and ethics for humanity is that it changes over time. It changes very quickly sometimes, right? What's taboo or not allowed or not accepted by society 5 years ago, 10 years ago can become acceptable today and have become to a large extent acceptable today, na'uzubillah, right? So I think the framework we should go back to looking at is the Maqasid al-Sharia, because that has foundations. The red lines are drawn and they don't change. The context, the application, and all that. That one, of course, it evolves over time, right? But the baseline ethics don't change. So that should be our baseline also in terms of, and that should be the framework that we operate within, right? And from there, naturally, there'll be, all these things that you can pull out for SRI reporting and ESG and all that.
Okay, thank you. Again, last one, Dannah, you want to close this?
Yeah, no, I don't know how I'll follow. I don't know how I'll follow that, Umar. That was really great. Really good perspective, mashallah. What I will say is, if you think about the origins of ESG, it makes sense, right? ESG came from this idea that organizations that care about environmental, social, and governance issues will be less volatile over time. They'll be more sustainable. They'll eventually yield better investor returns, and from the public market standpoint. I think this very wonderfully transposes into this financial inclusion, Sharia compliant Islamic digital economy space, because not only is it more important than ever that organizations and individuals take their social responsibilities seriously. It's very important for ethical businesses to exist, but there's also this concept of sustainability that exists here as well. And organizations that can outlast and continue to grow on the basis of that sustainability will ultimately be the winners. And we're very blessed to have a religion that has that as its core principles, alhamdulillah. So building a business on that seems like just the natural thing to do.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Dannah. Again, thank you, Ali and Umar as well for involving in this webinar. And yeah, thanks everyone, for joining us, going through an insightful journey, through the digital Islamic economy, and what a remarkable discussion it's been. And yeah, I think we've explored the explosive growth of the sector and heard firsthand from Wahid, from Hasan VCs, and from Innate Capital about their pivotal roles, in driving innovation across Islamic fintech, across halal tech, and beyond that. And again, I really appreciate everyone's engagement during Q&A. It has been fantastic, and I hope you've gained actionable insights to navigate, this dynamic landscape. And again, don't forget to check the resources, the whole analysis in Salaam Gateway websites. We've shared the link through that, including the full ranking reports, and feel free to reach out, if you have any follow-up questions. Again, until next time, and keep innovating and stay connected. Goodbye for now, wherever you are from the whole world. Assalamu alaikum. Have a great win.
Thank you so much.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum
Thank you,
assalam. Take care. Thank you.
everyone.